Hey guys, sorry we've only got one camera, so you're not going to have a very good view, and it's night time and the lighting's bad. This video's got nothing aesthetically going for it at all, very sorry, but it's an impromptu video in response to the messages and questions we've been getting from people about the North Korean missiles, because we made the previous video about North Korea versus Japan, and some people have been asking if these missiles have changed our opinions on the issue, and the answer is no, nothing's really changed. It's still posturing, and it's still posturing in the same way that the good guys are posturing. Again, those of you who haven't seen the first video, we talked about how people like to think that they're the good guys and the other people are the bad guys, because if you make everything black and white, it's easier to feel good about yourself, isn't it? If we convince ourselves that we're the good guys and North Korea are the bad guys, and us obviously is everybody on our side, and all the people on our side are the good guys, and the North Korean guys are the bad guys. And if you look at it like that, then it makes you feel better about yourself. But if you look at it objectively and reasonably and calmly and look at what's actually been going on, it's pretty much the same by both sides. The only difference is that North Korea's got a limited means of posturing. So, you know, the US and Japan and a couple of other countries have sent battle ships and fighter jets and bombers up and down just outside the North Korean borders, over the ocean just outside the North Korean borders, and they've been posturing up and down there, and of course they call that drills, as we talked about in the other video. North Korea's got limited number of things they can do like that, so their thing is the missiles, and obviously they're not threatening Russia or China or South Korea or even Japan with the missiles. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get on an even footing with the US, or they probably recognise they've got no chance of getting on an even footing, but but it seems that they're trying to at least get some sort of balance back against the US, in that obviously they're trying to demonstrate that they can reach the US mainland. So in their most recent tests, they actually fired a missile far enough that it would actually have reached Guam if they aimed it towards Guam. So now that they can reach Guam, and they're obviously testing to show that they can reach the US. So the way that Japan's been reacting to this, the media always love a drama, and they make it worse. Obviously they make it worse. They're real drama queens, and if you look at the adjectives that are used and the way they describe things, it's particularly the stuff we get from the Western media, it's even worse. But it's all that good guy, bad guy stuff. So any words that are used to describe what North Korea does are all highly emotional and highly dramatic, and the words that are used for our side, for the good guys, are all very passive, and you know, they're just conducting drills and exercises and things like that, whereas the North Koreans are being provocative and, you know, aggressive. And so in actual fact, if you look at it objectively, they're not doing anything much different from what the good guys are doing. The missiles going over Japan, what a lot of people have asked is, you know, is firing missiles over Japan, is that scaring people? Well, yeah, the media is scaring people, and then the government feels they need to do something. So what's happening up north around Hokkaido and Sendai and up around there is they're doing pretty pointless stuff. That we see it on TV. They have a warning system that sends out messages to people's mobile phones and on TV and on the radio and over loudspeakers. And North Korea has fired a missile. North Korea has fired a missile. Take cover. Take shelter. Take shelter. And they have images of school kids all being herded into hallways and given either helmets, or one video we saw, one thing on TV, we saw a news report, they had the kids wearing these funny looking padded foam hats that are obviously probably the ones they use in earthquake drills, probably, and they have these funny padded hats that they put on their heads, and then they're going and hiding in the school. So obviously that's probably where they go if there's an earthquake, probably. So they're doing that same thing for the missiles, sitting in the hallway on the floor with these padded hats, putting their hands over their heads. Which, you know, if a missile does come through the roof, sitting there with a padded hat and your hands over your head is probably not going to do a lot of good. But, again, to put the missile thing in perspective, you know, people are asking, you know, are you worried about it? Are you worried about it? Are you worried that you might, you know? Well, no, because if you look at it, again, if you look at it logically and reasonably, obviously the North Koreans aren't wasting their nuclear warheads on those tests, right? They're not firing the missile, those of you who haven't seen it, that they're firing the missiles in this sort of an arc out over the top of northern Honshu and Hokkaido, and then out into the sea. And they're just splashing down into the sea. So obviously they're not firing nuclear warheads because those things obviously are valuable to them. So they're not firing them. So basically all you've got is an ICBM with whatever fuel's on board to reach its destination. So in the event that, and this is what people are worried about, what if one of them falls out of the sky and lands on Japan? Well, yeah, then you're going to have an ICBM full of fuel landing in Japan, which would be similar to a commercial jetliner fully loaded with fuel that's just filled up from Tokyo and crashes somewhere in Japan. Would be a similar thing, wouldn't it, if you look at it reasonably and logically? And probably something that would surprise a lot of people is how little of Japan is actually populated. The areas of Japan that are populated obviously are highly densely populated. So the cities, you know, Tokyo and Osaka and Nagoya and all the main cities are obviously densely populated. But there's a huge percentage of Japanese land area that's actually not habitated because it's mountains and valleys and things like that. And if you look at a map of Japan and how the population's spread out, you'll see that's the case. That there's areas of real high, densely populated areas, and then there's mountains and valleys and things like that. So if you take a missile full of fuel and just drop it randomly somewhere in Japan, you know, what's the chances you're going to hurt someone? And if you look at, even if it did land in a heavy populated area, if you compare that to the number of people that are killed in car accidents in Japan every week, statistically your chances of being killed in a car accident in Japan are obviously much, much higher than your chances of being killed by a North Korean missile landing on your head. You know? Again, if you look at it logically and reasonably, the only people in Japan who should really be concerned would be those that are in the military bases, and particularly the American military bases, because obviously they're going to be the targets. If any sort of, you know, again, logically and reasonably, the chances that North Korea is actually going to start firing nuclear missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles at anybody is obviously really remote, because those guys know what would happen. They know that the whole world would turn against them if they started doing that, and their country would get destroyed and their leaders would get killed, no doubt. And they know that. They saw that happen in Iraq, they saw it happen in Afghanistan. They know that's what would happen. So they know it would be suicidal if they started actually firing live missiles at anybody. It's all posturing, obviously. But again, if in the unlikely event that it ever did happen, where they started firing missiles at each other, obviously the American military bases in Japan are going to be the targets. You know, Joe Public's little house out in the burbs or out in the country like we are is obviously, chances of us being hit by anything's really, really remote. So, you know, again, there's a lot of obviously being dramatic. It sells newspapers, it gets people to watch TV news programs, and they sit around and talk about it. It's all very dramatic, and you know, and the internet's a classic too. Sort of dramatic titles and, you know, really drama queen sort of stuff, and sort of doom and gloom and really emotive, dramatic, irrational sort of words about, you know, apocalyptic visions from North Korea and all that sort of stuff. And again, they quote the leaders, the North Korean leader, you know, they quote Kim, and he said this and he said that. And then of course, you know, we had Donald Trump recently talking about he's gonna bring fire and fury on North Korea, you know, and And I mean, it's just the same. It's just the same that he said that, and then the North Korean guy said something similar, really. And it was like, well, yeah, they're both saying that, aren't they? Really, it'd be nice to take Kim and Trump and put them into a UFC cage and let them fight it out between them. Would be ideal, but you know, it's really obvious from where we're sitting. It's really obvious that if everyone just relaxed and pulled their heads in and just sort of continued some sort of dialogue, you know, there's a guy, a pro wrestler, Japanese pro wrestler that's now a politician, and he went over to North Korea recently and had a meeting with the North Korean foreign minister, and came back and said, look, we've got to talk to these guys. We don't want to start a war with them. We've got to talk to them. And it's pretty sad. And he's not the smartest man in the world, this pro wrestler guy, but it's pretty sad when a pro wrestler or a retired pro wrestler makes more sense than the people that are supposed to be leading these countries that are involved in this nonsense, you know. But he was right. He went over and talked to them and came back and said, look, this is what we've got to do. We've got to have dialogue with these guys. We've got to sort it out with them, because it's just not logical that, you know, over the years there's been this went on between Pakistan and India, this went on between, you know, the USSR and America, and lots of people have had this same thing. America and Cuba, America and lots of people have had this stand up, push and shove thing. But you can't let it get to be actually fighting, you know. And you see some ignorant comments on the internet about, you know, let's just nuke them and all this sort of stupid shit. And again, the North Korean people themselves, the actual civilians, they're just the same as the South Korean civilians, you know. And we're saying the South Korean civilians are good people because they're our allies, and the North Korean civilians are bad people because their leaders are assholes. You know, it's their leaders that are assholes, not the people themselves. So firing nuclear weapons at that country is just going to kill more innocent people. You know, this strategy doesn't work, even without nuclear weapons, even with traditional weapons. You know, Afghanistan, there's been like 1.5 million civilians killed. Afghanistan or Iraq? 1.5 million civilians killed since that war started. You know, that's insane. Those people didn't do anything. It's the leaders that we've got to fight with. So it's the leaders we've got to resolve things with. Killing all the civilians isn't a solution. You know, it's not. And it doesn't matter who. You know, this strategy, oh, we can kill them before they kill us. Well, we'll kill their civilians before they kill our civilians. That's a pretty inhumane attitude to have towards life, isn't it? You know? So, look, the answer to the question is no, our attitude towards this hasn't changed. We still believe the same thing. The only solution is, you know, economic incentives. You know, that North Korea's a mess. You know, the North Korean leaders treat their people like shit. You know, get in there and say to them, look, you know, if you guys are prepared to give your people some more human rights and calm down with the military thing a bit, then we'll give you some big contracts to make Nike shoes or something. You know, in some sort of incentives, economic incentives. You know, the opposite talk is just stupid. You know, the opposite talk of more sanctions and more pressure on them. Put more pressure on them. Putting more pressure on them isn't going to help. You know, we've learnt that throughout history with all sorts of conflicts like this. It's not the solution. It's not the solution, obviously. So it seems the people that are live in more objective countries, or that are sort of more outside this nonsense, seem to be able to see it more objectively. It's interesting that comments from our European friends, our friends in Europe, tend to be a lot more moderate, a lot more reasonable and calm, because they can sort of see this. They've got a clearer perspective on this, obviously, because they haven't got the emotional, whoa, shame we didn't have our front camera, guys. It's crazy night on the road tonight. But, you know, it seems our European friends, a lot of our European friends can see this with more of an objective look. You know, some of our American friends can as well, obviously, and some of our Japanese friends and our Australian friends and everybody else can obviously leave very reasonable and logical comments as well. But it also seems that that's also the same countries where the extremist nut jobs come from. You know, the let's nuke them comments usually come from the USA, and you know, a lot of these other let's hit them first, let's strike them first, tend to come from, you know, the American allies. So that's, you know, Australia follows America into conflict like a lapdog. You know, anytime America wants to start a fight with somebody, Australia blindly follows on behind. Yeah, let's get them. It's just stupid. And Japan, the reason Japan's getting a bit of flack from North Korea now is because of it's allying itself with America. If it just calmed down and maintained a logical, reasonable discussion with North Korea and stayed out of that aggressive chest beating nonsense, we'd all be a lot safer, you know. So, and it'd be closer to a solution, whereas the chest beating, marching up and down the border in our fighter jets and bombers and battleships is really not a logical solution. Actually, some of the most insane comments we've had so far have actually been from military people inside Japan, because of course they've been programmed, some of those guys, to believing that they're totally essential to world peace and they're the world police, right? And that's a common tone to some of those comments we get from people is, you know, it's America's job to, you know, police the world, sort of thing. And what we've seen in the last 60, 70 years is that it doesn't work like that, does it? But anyway, there it was. Again, don't want to do this. We know what's going to happen. There'll be, you know, lots of angry people. Again, if you have different opinions on this, you're definitely welcome, and you'll see on our other video on the topic, there's lots of people who have other opinions, but you'll also see that they've expressed them in calm and civilized ways, and they haven't been aggressive or abusive about it. So if you want your comment to be read by other people, and you have a different opinion, by all means please tell us your opinion on the topic, but please don't have any abuse or insults included in your comment, or they will be deleted, because we don't think there's any need for that in a discussion. So rudeness and abuse is deleted and rude people are blocked. But as you will see underneath this video, there's lots of other opinions and they're most welcome. We believe in free speech. We just don't believe in abuse and rudeness. So anyway, there it was, guys. More videos coming soon.